Alrighty. Music's coming through. Like the camera looks okay. Mic's coming through. All right. Sweet. Axis. Part of the ship, part of the crew. Good to see everybody. It has been a while. Finally back. I think it's been over a month. Yep. I think that's exactly what it's been. I got back late last Friday night. Hey, Brennan G, thanks so much for the sub. Really appreciate it. But yeah, so I got back late Friday night after being gone almost all of the month of September. I was gone for a week at a conference at one of a. Just kidding. Good to see you, buddy. But yeah, I was at a conference that I'm one of the organizers for, so I had to be there ahead of time. And all through, and then afterwards, and then I came home for like a day, and then I was gone for like 2+ weeks with the Army, down at Mother Rucker, Fort Rucker, in Alabama, and it was a really good course, really good training, super cool stuff. More of a like refresher for flight paramedics because it was a sort of a condensed, shortened version of what we go through for our flight paramedic course, or the last phase of the flight paramedic training pipeline. But it was cool because it was a mixed, multidisciplinary group of people. So doctors, nurses, flight paramedics, and then from all branches. So Army, Air Force, and Navy. Marine Corps, the Marine Corps doesn't have its own medical. It had the Navy. But there was Blue Side Navy, so people that were part of the fleet, and then what we call Green Side Navy, so naval medical personnel who are attached to the Fleet Marine Force. Yeah, and so I have to go through a refresher course every 2 years as a flight paramedic for the Army, in order to keep up to date with any changes in like standard equipment, procedures, knowledge and stuff. Part of the fleet, part of the crew. And but also there's a lot of the course is called Joint En Route Critical Care, and so there's been a big emphasis on cross coordination between the different branches, in order to be able to move and evacuate patients to where they need to go, just because of the whole multi-domain aspects of the next big one. To a lesser extent, COIN, which is counterinsurgency operations, but now with LISCO, large-scale combat operations, being on everybody's mind, there's a renewed emphasis on, hey, how do we all come together to make this happen? So yeah, it's good training. But thankfully, I don't have to go anywhere for any more Army courses for like 6 months. I don't think they're going to sell the battlecruiser. I think if they sell the battlecruiser, I'm going to riot and fling poo. I think it's a terrible idea. I think selling anything bigger than the Javelin is a terrible idea. I think being able to build a combat ship bigger than a Javelin is a terrible idea. But that's another discussion. So yeah, welcome back to the Pathfinders podcast. I am Tree0311. Here on the Pathfinders podcast, we are charting the way through all the nebulous information surrounding Star Citizen, Squadron 42, and their development, and we've got a full show tonight, because I've got Roadmap Roundups to catch up on. Nothing too like jaw-dropping recently. Sorry, I keep looking over at the stream over here on my right hand side, but there's some things they've been doing. They've been updating sprints on the progress tracker. Not a lot, but they've been updating some. And I think we're going to see more updates to the progress tracker post CitizenCon to show what they've been working on. Other teams have been working on that they have been holding back on telling us about via the monthly reports and the progress tracker. It's just a theory. It's a conspiracy theory. But, they've done that sort of thing before. and I think they are doing it again in order to sort of have some surprise and build up a little bit more hype with CitizenCon this year than we would otherwise have because it's shorter. So yeah, we'll be catching up on the Roadmap Roundups. We're going to go through the monthly report for September, which is a pretty good one. Not as juicy or as big as others, but leading up to CitizenCon, even though it's only a 2-hour CitizenCon direct, there's some good information in there. And then we're going to take a look at a few predictions for CitizenCon, and they are kind of interwoven a little bit just because of some of the mentions in the monthly reports, and we'll talk about that as we go through them. But yeah, so in other news, I got a puppy. So yeah, we adopted a puppy on Sunday. He's a 4-month-old boxer. We have named him Toro. He is basically all black. CitizenCon is going to be all about exploration and science gameplay loops. I'm sure of it. Calling it now. Wife's way tier. I mean, based off my prediction, part of that is true. It might not be what people want from exploration, but the primary functionality associated with exploration, I think, is going to be very prominent at CitizenCon. But yeah, obviously today was a very busy day. Working on getting him housebroken. He's a very sweet dog, incredibly mellow for a boxer, but also incredibly mellow for a puppy. But he's a good boy. He's a good boy, and he's already very much attached to me. So yeah, we're doing well so far. Good to be home. But let's go ahead and just you wait. Yeah. It's a matter of like, is he gonna like get a little bit more confident? And how do I turn that off? I'm messing with dark mode on my browser to make sure that I don't have anything glaring at me while I'm doing the show, because it like lights up my face worse than we're in the pre-teenage of our puppy. Yeah. We'll see. I'm gonna try and get him all trained up, and but it's good for me because it forces me to get out and go on more walks, and I didn't take him running with me yet. We're not, he does really well on the leash. I've taken him for a couple walks, and he does really well on the leash. He doesn't mind it at all, which is just wild to me. He's just happy to be outside and walking along. But I'm not ready to take him running with me yet. It'll be a little ways before we're running together. Pardon me. Gotta have my drink. Okay, let's go ahead and switch screens, and we'll get started with the show. We'll start with the Roadmap Roundups and the monthly report, and then we'll get into some predictions, some deep dives into a few things. And my predictions are basically like 3 main categories, but there's things within them that are like sub predictions, I guess you'd say. All right, let's switch over. Okay, and just as a reminder for everybody, I am always streaming for charity. I keep no monetization for myself. I actually need to make a donation to stack up from monetization. But yeah, always raising money for stackup.org, which is a charity that supports veterans and members of the military by helping connect them with video games and gaming communities to help combat PTSD and the costs associated with separation from your friends and family and support groups. And obviously here I am, it works for me, and so I am a big supporter of their mission. And so just know that just by being here, suffering through ads, watching later on YouTube, or any support, whether you want to make a donation directly, or if you want to avoid the ads and subscribe. Any support is appreciated. Just glad to have you guys here. And I'm going to be doing a stream, a big old streamathon for Veterans Day weekend. I don't know if it's going to be Saturday or Sunday. And I'm working on figuring out how to do a giveaway. I've never done one before, and so I'm going to give away a ship during the stream, and haven't figured out how I'm going to do that. But that's the plan. I'm going to try and get some other veterans, veterans who are in the content creator community for Star Citizen to also fundraise for Stack Up over that weekend, but just been really busy. So let's take a look at the Roadmap Roundups. You guys have all seen these. We've all seen them, but we're just catching up with the latest. So the September 10th Roadmap Roundup, don't need to read the preamble because it's always been the same. So 4.3.1 has since released, along with the medical gameplay improvements. Boy, this is, talk about a stretch. Medical gameplay improvements. What new medical gameplay? Oh, it consumes resources. That's it. Hardly medical gameplay. That's resource network. That's not medical gameplay. Yeah, there's nothing to do with medical and healing gameplay other than the fact that it consumes a resource now. This is just essentially part of a piece of the resource network. It's not actual any changes to medical gameplay or healing other than the fact that it consumes resources. There's no it would be like calling it mining gameplay because the laser consumes fuel. It's like, oh, we've made big changes to mining gameplay and big additions, and it's like, wait, what? It consumes power now. Okay, cool. That doesn't change the mining aspect of it. But it is committed. I'm working on a script for a video for that. We'll see how quickly I can get it done, because I have thoughts and opinions and things that I want to see for medical gameplay, and I think CIG is going to get there. I think a lot of the doom and gloom surrounding it all is a bit overblown, especially with regen, when people are like, oh, death, the regen's dead, death of a spaceman is dead. It's like, y'all, they just reiterated everything from regeneration and death of a spaceman in Jump Point within the last year. Big old Jump Point article rehashing everything, and nothing has changed. So I don't know what to tell you, folks. They're like, oh, that was 4 years ago. Everything changes. No, nothing changed. Nothing has changed. The big old thing that the design brief they just put out had nothing to do with healing or medical gameplay. It was just the respawn flow surrounding regeneration. And now, do I hate that respawn flow? Yes, I think it's horrible. I think whoever's idea that was to, hey, let's physicalize the quick save. It's stupid. Why would I want to spend my time running around to different med pads creating more imprints? That is a dumb mechanic. That is a dumb gameplay idea. They should absolutely gamify the imprint, and when you big die, when your body can't be recovered and you don't wake up in a hospital bed because you've been recovered and revived, not respawned, not new body, just revived, brought back to life just like we would do nowadays. But when you actually regen because your body can't be recovered, you should be able to just go to that screen and then just click the button and say, this is where I want to regen. I shouldn't have to run around and create an imprint at all these different save points, like you're running around pressing F5 during an RPG. That is a dumb mechanic. Imprints are electronic, are transferable. You can move them from one Ibrahim sphere to another. That's part of the lore. Is you're only ever supposed to have one imprint, but they were transferable. So the idea that, well, you can create multiple imprints now. How is that value added? like if we're talking, and sorry, getting out on a tangent, but if everybody's complaining about unnecessary friction in the game and things that don't respect players' time, one of the things that would go to the top of that list for me would be I have to manually go to all these different beds to create additional imprints, and then be able to choose which one I want to, load as if it's a save game file from another game. No, gamify it. Gamify it just like you should have gamify the rest of the respawn flow, where if you are downed, and my friction is the AFK timer. What AFK timer? But if you are downed and you are like, okay, well, I don't want to continue on with this mission, it's too hard or something like that, or I've got too many injuries, I can't continue on with this, I just need an ambulance to come get me and take me to a hospital so I can get healed up and try something different, which that's real life. That's how this works. Then all you need to do is have that same screen and then be able to have, click a button and it takes you to the star map and you pick which clinic or hospital you want to wake up at. You didn't regen, you just got treated and transported by an ambulance as if you went unconscious after calling 911 and someone came and picked you up. Happens all the time. Like, this has been my entire life's work. Just gamify it and say that it happens instantly, and that's the part of like, okay, well, you could get rezzed up, you can get somebody, have an NPC or a player come and revive you and wake you up on scene, but if you're injured or if the mission is too hard, you're unprepared, well then, it is what it is. Again, something that happens in real life. We do lots of treatments in EMS where people call 911 because they are like about to go unconscious because their blood sugar gets too low, or they are about to go unconscious, or somebody is calling because they've gone unconscious because they've overdosed, or there's a number of different things where I can treat you, and then you say, I don't want to go to the hospital. Thank you for your help, and continue about your day. Normal thing. It's just gamification of what happens in real life. What part's a standard feature in all MMOs, Brennan G? Because I don't mind you being able to pick where you regen at all. I think but I think it should be you big died. Oh, AFK timers, gotcha. Yeah. I think that if you big die, if you get blown up by a size 10 torpedo or something like that, where an NPC or a player can't come revive your body, you're too far gone, then it instantly puts you to the respawn screen. You click the regen button, that's the only ones available, and it gives you, okay, well, here are the tier 1 beds that are available to you to respawn at. Here's the nearest landing zone hospital. Here's the nearest NPC galaxy, or eventually Endeavor Hope or something like that, or even an Apollo. All these sorts of options. I want us as players to have more options with Respawn. The current thing that they showed us, where it just gives you 4 different options of regeneration and one thing for a beacon, is garbage. It is garbage design, and whatever dev or devs over at CIG came up with it, they need to go back to the drawing board, and they need to do that after they go outside and do some push-ups to think about how bad that design is. It's one of the things that has made me the most mad out of Star Citizen's development, looking at that and seeing like, this is terrible. This is bad gameplay. Like, not just, okay, this is definitely has room for improvement. It is just plain bad. You have binary options, regen or beacon. That should never be that binary. This is, players should have more options, just like everything else. Nothing in the game is so binary like that. Sorry. Anyway, tangent. RSI Apollo Triage and Medevac committed, obviously released. I haven't even had a chance to go and look at mine yet. I haven't even gotten into SC since I got back, just because I've been so busy. And I also have been having fun playing Jump Space and the Menace demo. If you haven't played Jump Space or haven't bought it, I highly encourage you. It's only $20. It is great co-op fun. It's great fun by yourself. And then Menace, if you like turn-based tactics, really tactical, strategic type games, it is super good. I'm having a lot of fun with the demo. It is hard. Got a lot of work, and there's a lot that isn't in the demo that it'll be going to early access in January, I think. But I encourage you to check it out. The Onyx facilities. The Site B, so the expansion, the deepest point of Jorad's lab. And so that's been released in 4.3.1. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to check it out because I haven't even had a chance to play 4.3.1 yet, but I'm looking forward to giving it a shot probably this weekend. Maybe I'll stream tomorrow night as well and play some SC and delve into the Onyx facilities some more. NPC dropships, again, something I'm super hyped about. I know that there are still some issues with them in terms of performance and like how fast they are able to, get onto the ground and unload their troops and stuff. It does need to make things a little bit more difficult. Right now, it's still at the point where it's, when I've seen people streaming and playing against them, it's a little bit of a turkey shoot still. But I think as the NPC behaviors get better, and you also like, if they can spawn like escorts that because that's one of the things that in terms of NPC perception that's coming along in development is the ability for NPC ships to target ground targets, like people running around on the ground. And so you could have a dropship, landing and dropping off troops while another dropship is providing top cover. A little bit of combined arms goodness. But the fact that they are back and they are working and the troops actually get out is a big deal. It's been years since these were first introduced in Stanton, and they were broken, and so they just turned them off. But NPC dropships are one of the most important sort of tech features to being able to have NPCs be able to land and revive you. Because if an NPC dropship can land in a clearing nearby you and the NPCs can get out and do the medic behavior to come revive you, there you go. You call 911, you get down, you press the 911 beacon, help, I've fallen, I can't get up, press your little their necklace, and they show up and they get you up. They provide a little cover fire, for you to get up and get on your way, make an evac or whatever you want, however you want to make it work. But it's all just NPC behaviors that are well within CIG's ability to do. The new heavy utility armor, I forget what that one was called. The name for it. I get all screwed up on all the names for them. That was committed. They added a new picture to it. OMC, yep. Yeah, and OMC is one of the factions we fight against in Squadron 42, so that's interesting. The Volt LMG was committed. Bearing laser cannon art refactors, those came out looking really good. And mission pickup on location was postponed to a future release and is now on the release view, or is now set to tentative, I think is what we're going to see here for 4.3.2. So let's move on to the September 24th Roadmap Roundup. This is the one from 2 weeks ago. Northern Trooper says, okay, hear me out. When you're downed and awaiting on medical rescue, there is a non-zero chance of an NPC landing the ship and kidnapping you. I am not opposed to random things like that happening, just because I think that kind of randomness is value added. I think those are the kinds of things where if you were watching somebody stream and that sort of thing happened, and it totally derailed what they're doing, and now it sends them on this like kind of side quest thing, I think that'd be hysterical and totally worth it. Before we continue on, notice how there's nothing for the progress tracker at the bottom of the September 10th Roadmap Roundup. September 24th, so changes to the release view for 4.3.1. All committed cards were set to released. They added the armor and ballistic damage update, and the missile damage radius update. So the explosive radii. They changed the area of effect, essentially damage. 4.3.2 has the new event, so it's the next chapter in the Fight for Pyro storyline. And if you've been paying attention to the leaks, you can see them in my Discord. We have a channel for that, but I'm not going to spoil those. But we're going back to Pyro, going back to Pyro. Kloss and Werner laser repeater art refactors. So updating those for sizes 1, 2, and 3. I imagine they're going to be doing that for a lot of weapons and other ship attachments that like aren't weapons over the next year, just to bring them up to the standard. I think that's a really good sort of new junior artist task to update older things and bring them up to the current standards, as well as going through those sort of legacy items and making sure that they not only look visually appropriate for the game we have now, but also are performant. There's plenty of old things in the game that are resource hogs because of the way they were built ages ago that need to be essentially updated in order to be take advantage of the newer techniques and technologies, but also be more performant, so that way you don't turn and look at this one thing and suddenly that it causes a frame drop. More Wicklow ship offerings, as you can see, with upgraded components and unique base livery. Heavy BattleTech armor. I forget which. Here, let's go to the release view. And because I need to look at the image of that again. So characters, where's the BattleTech? There's the utility one. Okay, the heavy utility is the Corbel. And the BattleTech armor is the Palatino. And I don't like the base shield for this one, but I do kind of like the legs and the shoulders. And I never have gotten in. I don't like the silly groin protector thing. And they just look funny to me. We had to wear them on my first deployment, and they were just a giant pain in the butt. This is the one that's the OMC one, right? If I remember correctly. It's got some cool elements. It just looks kind of funky. Looks like something from a different game. If it was a pain in the butt, you're wearing it wrong. Yeah. They were awkward to run in. And all it would do is stop shrapnel, which is important because like the part of the area that is protecting the groin is a very vulnerable spot, in terms of you having very superficial big veins and arteries right there. But they hung down so far that they like it got in the way of you running and slowed you down, and it made you more of a target. I feel like there's a better way. Yeah, the crotch rub I got from it. Oops. Let's see, where are we? New hairstyles. We saw that. The AI FPS turret. Okay, so this is one of those things that has been getting punted over and over and over again past several months. Has been set to tentative. And I think, and they're in the. If last I checked, they are in the build. I haven't seen them yet. I haven't seen anybody streaming them or anything like that. So if you guys can confirm or deny if these things are in the build and they're functioning yet, let me know. As well as mission pickup on location. I haven't heard anything here nor there about that. And I don't know if it's in today's roadmap yet because I haven't even barely looked at it. But the mission pickup on location it is a nice touch and a piece of mission system 2.0 or mission system version 2, whatever you want to call it, tech. That is something that Kawaku, Elliot Maltby, has been waiting on in terms to further expand the mission offerings and make them better. So, down here at the bottom, updated deliverables for the progress tracker. These have already been on the progress tracker for a while. Nothing has changed except for they have updated the sprints for them on the progress tracker. Now, notice how they've just been updating the sprints on these things that have been on the progress tracker for a couple months now, if I remember correctly, and they haven't added anything else. And this is why I think after CitizenCon, when we see some of the things that they've been working on that haven't been in the monthly reports and aren't showing up on the progress tracker, I think that's when we'll get the progress tracker update for the deliverables surrounding those things. And some of them will probably have multiples. And it'll go back and show that, hey, they've been working on this for however long and the current sprint is scheduled out towards wherever. But these are very indicative of what we are likely of some of the things that we are likely to see at CitizenCon come Saturday and more. Let's see. Okay, so that is it for the September 24th Roadmap Roundup. Now let's look at the one that just released this afternoon, not like 2 or 3 hours ago. So this is October 8th today. Structural salvage. There's a big update to how that is working in terms of the resources given and them being refined. And this is all leading up to upcoming work on crafting. And so this is part of my predictions, and there's not really anything to show for it, except that it's been all over the monthly reports. And the way that they are talking about it, if you actually read the monthly reports and understand what they're saying, you should be encouraged, especially when you read it in the context of what they've been saying surrounding tech previews and engineering. Yeah, that's been my problem is I'll have I hear you, Brennan G. I will play a lot for like 2 to 3 weeks, and then a new game will come out that I've been waiting on, and then I'll play that for a couple weeks, and then I'll have to go somewhere for the army for a couple weeks, and then I'll come back and I'll play something. I'll be itching to play SC, and so like I have some prolonged dry spells that are partly due to new games and partly due to just me being gone so much over the last 6 months to a year that I've had to relearn a lot of things and I've had a lot of guided tours on how to how do I do this again? Yeah, it's been so long. But when I do play, I've been having a lot of fun. Like I really enjoyed the Onyx facilities. I enjoyed working together with others to do the Race for Stanton stuff, even though there was a lot of issues, with workarounds and working together with others, it was still fun. So it's been, this year's been pretty good to me. Could be better, yes, but it has been pretty good in a lot of ways. But the structural salvage stuff, like I haven't done salvaging in ages. And so I'm really looking forward to making some time to go out and do some salvaging with some people just to get some awareness of how these changes are working and what it means. But it's great that this is coming in leading up to crafting, because the fact that we are generating materials that need to be refined from salvage to be used in crafting, along with things that we already mine and refine, and I can imagine that there will be that there has been work that goes into the looting and harvestable systems in terms of what's generated, how much and stuff, and so I imagine that work will also lead into more gameplay related to those things as part of the entire crafting loop. The visual update to the Klaus and Werder repeaters, more Wicklow ships that had the visual updated. All they did was change the name, make it say Palatino for the BattleTech armor. Frontier Fighters Finale, so they just changed the name for the new event. The Yormandi, a large creature introduced in 4.3.2. The Yormandi lurks in the depths of the Onyx facility, set to tentative. And then the Yormandi Cave. So it's a hidden cave within the Onyx facilities where the Yormandi lives. Looking forward to hearing more about the Yormandi and getting eaten by one. Look at the... It's not under character, so AI... There it is. Yormandi. Oh, here. I know. We can... See, where's that image that was posted? Odysseus posted that image. I'm going to pull it up. Browser. And browser. So there's the Yormandi Cave. So there's like an ancillary path over here. And there's water, and then there's a big structure thing over there. And then there's the Yormandi itself. It definitely gives me, coming up out of the water, the thing looks huge compared to the size of the water, but it could be like a small pool that leads to like a much larger underwater like lake thing. And I feel like that's lightning maybe coming off of it. The whole thing definitely gives me sort of Oriental mythology vibes. Like it looks kind of a Chinese dragon type. It sort of has that look. I think it's menacing though. Like look at those flipping teeth. What a monster. Good God. We're all gonna die. That looks like they took it straight out of the Sword of Shannara book. I am not aware of that book. I do have a track record of being eaten by things. Yes, it has happened. Oop. So yeah, the Yormandi looks cool. I think I'll probably try and make some time to stream tomorrow night, and so that way I can get my feet wet with 4.3.1 before 4.3.2 releases. Denzino, hey, good to see you. I just saw a video on the Yormandi. The animation and the attack looks amazing. Do you was it on YouTube? Can you pull up the link and just drop it in the chat, and I'll check it out later? Because I would like to take a look at it. Because I'll probably... I haven't been playing PTU just so I can avoid a biased look, or avoid getting biased looks at things. Plus, I just haven't had time. But once things are released is when I tend to jump into them. At least when it comes to new, particularly new features. Sweet, thanks. We will save that for later. Thank you much. Cool. So more caves, more underground. I'm all about it. All right, that is it for getting caught up on the roadmap roundups. Oh, finally. And we got a little bit of a breather until the next 2 more weeks, and then we'll see. So here we are for the 8th. Here's CitizenCon. So the next roadmap roundup will be on the 22nd. Plenty of time for them to update the progress tracker to show some of the stuff that we're going to see at CitizenCon and the things that they've been holding back on, and because we haven't been getting ISC content. Yeah, when do we get more content on the ground? Yeah, especially when it comes to like missions, like they're starting to filter back in terms of bringing missions back to certain locations, but there's still a lot of work to do to update missions to work with the mission system or factor, as well as things that they're just waiting to do because they want to wait until the new mission system is in, so they don't like have to redo and keep redoing work. Like they can bring back an old mission that put in work to make it work with the with the refactor to the mission system, but then to actually make the mission how they want to make it with the feature set that they have with the version 2 of the mission system, then they'd have to go back and redo it again. And so it's Elliot Maltby was talking, made some mentions of it, and he said there's a lot of things that he's waiting on, eagerly anticipating, him and his team for not only making new missions but updating legacy missions that is part of that dev work for the mission system. So let's switch screens real quick, and that way I can have a nice organized timestamp before we get into the monthly report. Close the roadmap roundups. I'll leave the release view up just in case I need to refer back to it. Okay. And got the monthly report up. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and switch back. Okay. All right, PU monthly report September 2025 with Alpha 4.3.1, Virtue's Descent live, and another thrilling update this month. The Star Citizen universe has never been more packed with adventure. Read on for everything done at CIG Studios throughout September in pursuit of this new content, from updated backend code to all new missions and more. So, AI content. The AI content team continued to test updates to some of the landing zone NPCs, looping in the QA team to help stress test the setup to ensure it can take the strain of extensive use and trigger any potential issues. Pardon me. Turn down the thermostat. Let's see. To make stations and cities feel more alive, the team leveraged the med station behavior used during the regen crisis. Now shopkeepers will interact more with the people frequenting their store. The team is also looking at an underutilized aspect of landing zone archetypes and are preparing a proposal to make better use of guard. An underutilized aspect of landing zone archetypes and are preparing a proposal to make better use of guard. I wonder what that underutilized aspect of landing zone archetypes is. And to make better use of guard. I wonder if that could have something to do with like maybe smuggling. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, dance fights, yeah. In addition to the ongoing task of setting up comms call characters for missions, the devs also started looking at mission providers in general and built a new behavior to support face-to-face interactions in the future. I will say, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm really enjoying and appreciating the fact that we have comms calls for... Damn it, bot. Hold on, gotta kill it with fire. report spam bot view bot. There we go. Okay. Yeah, where is my mod, Northern Trooper? Blizzrad, where are you? You lurking? You can't lurk, Blizzrad. What do I pay you for? Probably doing some weird Aussie shit. Yeah, Nas changed his content creator name to oh gosh. Fuck. I forgot it already. I'm a bad person. Yes, he was streaming yesterday. Was that yesterday? He's I'm not sure where his life changes are in terms of where he is in the steps towards this big move and such. Just because I only see him in the Discord intermittently here and there. But yeah, we'll see if he starts streaming more often and everything. I'd love to in this area. Yeah. AI features. AI features updated numerous features last month, beginning with AI weapon component, which will now remain in sync with weapon statuses, allowing them to work better in unison. Support was then added for NPCs to systematically target vehicles in combat. Improvements were made to the Rocketeer behavior, allowing NPCs to switch between using a rocket launcher and pistol depending on the situation. Adjustments to the visuals of various behaviors were made, improving cover usage and fixing multiple assets. Or asserts? Assets? Asserts? I'm not sure. Yeah, this is a very important behavior. Being able to have Rocketeers to make it so that way NPCs on the ground, even if they're on foot, not in ground vehicles, can threaten ships and other vehicles. This behavior, they've been working on these behaviors for a while, and they have all the things they've been working on them to allow for NPCs to essentially do combined arms stuff. For NPCs to be able to drive around ground vehicles and use those ground vehicles to target players on the ground, on foot, as well as players in ground vehicles and in ships. Because right now, it's very one-dimensional. Yeah, how about that would be great if they actually said that, like in order to give you a split-second warning, something along those lines to let you know, oh, somebody's grabbing somebody's about to take a shot with an animus or a railgun. That'd be cool. But yeah, as these behaviors evolve and get further developed, hopefully sooner rather than later, we see them released. Because that's one of the big things that people don't get about using their ships and using them to gun down ground targets and stuff, is that if you're flying along, they don't have to be able to blow up your ship. All they have to do is be able to hit it in a way that affects your flight characteristics and make it so that way you can't, do the hovering turret thing, or makes it difficult for you to strafe, or makes it difficult for you to land. You don't have to shoot them down. You don't have to shoot down the target. You just have to damage it enough that it can't continue on mission. And that's a win. That's like say for helicopters. If I ride around in back of Blackhawks all the time, and if we have single engine airspeed, and you can't do certain things with only a single engine. If you lose one engine, you can't come to a hover and land that way. You can't get below a certain speed. You have to, like we have to go back and do like a roll-on landing. If if you lose hydraulics, that can affect your flight performance and your flight characteristics. All these things are it's a normal progression of how combat works in the real life sense. But think about how our ships are built. If you're trying to come in for a landing and someone takes a shot at you, and they don't blow up your ship, but you lose a VTOL as you're coming in for a landing, or a thruster as you're trying to make a strafing run, that could end up very badly for you. And so that's the interesting bit that people don't take into consideration, because everybody just thinks of it as, well, they have to shoot me down, they have to blow me up. And no, think about like when you're flying your ship, and it's rudimentary right now, but sometimes you experience it more than others. But when you're flying your ship and you get the warnings about, oh god, what does it say? It's the to do with like thruster alignment, or oh gosh, help me out, guys. But that's the kind of damage that a railgun, torque alignment. Pardon me. Yeah, so if you're torque imbalance, there you go. Or is it torque or thrust? I don't remember. Either way, it's the same effect in that your ship is trying to compensate via the IFCS system, Intelligent Flight Control System, to be able to compensate for the fact that you have damaged thruster. And it's making it so that it's trying to be like, okay, he wants to do this. We can't do that with the thrusters that we have left, but this is what we can do. And that will affect your ability to land. It'll affect your ability to hover. It'll affect your ability to fly at a certain speed and maintain altitude. With the new flight model, with engineering, with Maelstrom, with all these sorts of things coming online, it won't matter if they don't blow you up. It will matter if they damage you enough that you can't continue on mission, and you either need to fly away or you crash. And you may not have crashed and blown up, but now you are out of the fight, and they didn't have to, waste a bunch of missiles to blow you up. They just had to have one that was properly placed for things to go badly. Default behaviors were then introduced to the buddy AI. So this is going to pop up in missions in the not too distant future. I'm calling it right now. Allowing NPCs to follow their leader, because this was developed for Squadron 42. And so I imagine this is one of those things that they are slowly starting to port over from Squadron 42 now that they are at a certain point in polish with AI behaviors and stuff for Squadron. Pardon me. Well, in Danger Hub, where you are right. Because sometimes it'll happen and it's so insignificant that you don't notice a difference. Or like I've gotten it where it's like it just magically turned on for no reason. And so it's kind of like a check engine light. You're like, that's fine. It'll be fine. Whatever. But they've it's been a couple of years since they talked about the buddy AI, as in the Squadron 42 monthly reports. But this is something that I imagine I think is probably getting ported over into the PU and further refined. TPS reports covers a long path was finalized based on feedback, while ammo looting updates are underway too. This will affect holstering. It triggered idiot light. This will affect holstering and stowing primary weapons and prevent NPCs from switching to their pistols when looting if they still have primary weapon ammo. Formerly mentioned in previous monthly reports as an upcoming creature, the new Yormandi now uses different fire modes in its attacks. Issues with perception giving false positives were also fixed. Further improvements are currently underway for this and existing creatures. In addition, new functionality was added for testing first reactions by generating test cell level variants, making rapid iteration and testing easier for each situation. This includes testing for first reactions and animation flows. AI tech. September saw AI tech improve NPCs using elevators by simplifying the setup of the transit carriage. Focus is currently on 3D navigation and NPCs flying ships. So they've been talking about this. If you've listened to the monthly reports, or read them in several of the last several months, it's a new voxel-based system that is used for not only NPCs flying ships in space in terms of avoidance of things and being able to maintain a flight path, but also it's a system that they'll use for EVA for NPCs. The team continued to improve the flight Pathfinder system and 3D collision avoidance using the new voxel grid approach for custom environments. The focus is to unify the process flow with the one used for ground requests and preemptive adaptation of the Pathfinder structure. This will deal with the paths generated if a spatial voxel grid is present. This also includes the introduction of distinct parallel jobs for search and refinement and how the flight path is constructed. Additionally, hard turns have been introduced alongside allowing ships to get nose on target more quickly. So this is something that, like when I was streaming before I was gone, I got nearly kamikazed by a NPC prospector at one of the Hathor locations because of the old system doesn't allow them the ships to 3D pathfind very well and do terrain avoidance the way they should be. And so multiples of these prospectors were strafing my ship on the ground because it's a ship. They weren't shooting at me on the ground, they're shooting the ship. But while they're doing their strafing runs, they couldn't maintain their flight path and ended up crashing into the ground, and some of them would bounce off and some of them would just hit the ground and explode. Development was done on AI perception code, with the team fixing issues with knowledge escalation when seeing enemies between the primary and secondary fields of view. Probably the most fun I've ever had in the game is dragging NPC ships into the ground, mountain or asteroids. I used to only kill things that way. Oh, like getting them to follow you and then you avoid the terrain and they don't. Yeah, it is funny, but they definitely need to be improved, and that's what this system is. I mean, it is definitely a trope, and like it should still happen, just not as frequently, I guess. Like it should be a skill-based thing. Like it shouldn't be so easy to do. I miss those cocktails. Improvements were then made to the way assignments are queued in relation to the usable builder tool. Crashes during general use were also fixed, such as when changing alignment slots and expanding the line pop-up edit for geom and helper geom editing. Updates were made to the AI sequence system, which manages AI scripting in the flow graph. This enforces the validation of action sequences and ensures the correct execution context is set in these systemic activities, providing a more reliable way to manually script agents and to guarantee actions are validated and executed correctly. Pardon me. The critical flow mode for AI agents was brushed up too. While in this mode, action execution errors are still reported, but can now be handled with specific fallback, allowing the flow to proceed instead of failing and potentially stalling. This is still in progress and will be further enhanced going forward. StarScript improvements are still being made as the team improve the tool following feedback from the devs. Finally, subscription content data improvements were made to reduce errors going forward. AI Game Intelligence Development Team. In September, the Game Intelligence Development Team focused on completing the next milestone for Mission System 2.0. This is the stuff that Elliot Maltby is excited about. They're currently breaking down the work and discussing the best possible path to approach the implementation. They also continue. They also continue to fix bugs and performance issues, and worked on features suggested by the designers to improve StarScript. It's been a while since I've done a podcast, so I'm not used to talking so much. Or it's getting dry really fast. Animation. The animation team continued to work on an upcoming creature and boss fight alongside supporting a new mission giver. I don't think this is the Yormandi since they just talked about it. I think hopefully it means something else. Alongside supporting a new mission giver. Facial animation progressed through new performances that were captured in late August. These include characters that will be present in multiple upcoming releases, including a returning air traffic control voice. Returning. Who could be returning? Oh, I don't know. What's his name? I forgot how you say it, but the very Rastafarian kind of dude from Levski. Yeah, Luke Skywalker. This is part of the predictions, and this is why I'm very confident that we're going to see Levski and Nyx feature prominently during CitizenCon, as well as I think we're going to see Nyx in tech preview before the end of the year. I think they're going to handle it like Pyro, and we're going to tech preview it and test it all out. And it might not be the whole thing; it might only be a part of it, as they lead up to as they lead up to release for. This coincides with I think it was the last month or the month before mention for the narrative team where they talked about populating new location with content and locations, or so they're very much talking about a new star system with populating it with locations and content. Hello, fellow space pilots. The animation, narrative, and mocap teams also planned for their next shoot, which will be held at the beginning of October. Art characters. The character art team finalized both new armors and a new gang. Work also continued on polishing the Yormandi. New gang. Didn't they mention something about that somewhere? They haven't changed anything in Nyx recently. If you do compare, so Nyx was added to the Galactopedia in 2022, I think it was. And so the changes to Nyx in the Galactopedia are it is a little bit different. They're very minimal changes compared to what was in the Galactic Guide. And that's why when people are like, oh, everything's subject to change because Pyro, and it's like, no, that's not how these sorts of things work. Pyro was an exception to the rule because of the way that Pyro was designed and the time it was designed. The other star systems are not that way, and the other star systems have all had updates and changes in the Galactopedia long before Pyro did. And their updates in the Galactopedia reflect how the game has changed and progressed. The concept art team continued iterating on new armors. the biggest things with Nyx is that the asteroid belts are and always have been very prominent, a very prominent feature within Nyx. But that's where a lot of the gameplay is going to be due to the asteroid bases that are hidden within those belts. But also Nyx 2 it has lots of abandoned mining facilities, and so abandoned mining facilities. We have abandoned mining facilities in Pyro right now, but I think we're going to see abandoned distribution center archetype mining facilities or mining facility archetypes in Nyx in the future. And so I think that's some of the content that we'll see at CitizenCon is location-based content for Nyx, as well as concept art for new location archetypes in Castra. So, art ships. In the UK, work continued to bring the RSI Aurora and Aegis Hammerhead up to modern standard. The Aurora progressed through the Lot 0 and final stages as improvements were made to the component bays, bed access and dashboard placement, entrance method, VTOL setup, and cargo access on the underside. I wouldn't be surprised if they showed that off during CitizenCon. Maybe some new variants. Who knows? But highlighting that work. For the Hammerhead, focus was on implementing the improvements made to the base corridor kit from the recent Idris release, alongside making the component bays and relays, making sure the component bays and relays are suitably placed and accessible. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it functions within the game, and because it's old, it's legacy. The amount of cargo it carry, it'll be interesting to see how they implement it and make it fit. They have to do it. They have to support it. It just it creates a unique challenge. And to a lesser extent, the Mustang. The Paladin progressed into the Lot 0 phase, with final adjustments being made to the main quad turret to ensure its movement is unhindered in both flight and landed states. The downstream teams kicked off their work on the ship too. So, I think the Paladin is probably a shoo-in for CitizenCon, seeing as it progressed into Lot 0. So I think during September it probably finished its LOD teams, as well as the fact that the downstream teams kicked off their work on the ship. Because it's Anvil and because they just did the Asgard, I think that a month and change to get it through final art is probably believable, but we'll see. The Miss Colby is now well into the white box phase. The majority of the interior was implemented to the required level, while adjustments are currently being made to the exterior mesh to meet the gate requirements. I hope we see some updates to the work. I'd love to see some of the how they're going about this process for it during IAE, because I think it'll still be in gray box at that point. Following last month's work, the Drake Ironclad and Ironclad Assault, plus the updated command module, are approaching their combined white box gate review. 4 unannounced vehicles also continue development through September. The first is approaching its Lot 0 review, while the second progressed through the Lot 0 gate and is now in its final stage. So this will also be a CitizenCon ship, whatever it is. This is the unannounced one for CitizenCon. The third, a variant of a popular recent release, is receiving gray box and Lot 0 work in tandem due to the nature of the changes. Some people are speculating that this is a Apollo variant, or an Apollo variant. So we'll see. I think there's definitely potential for variants within the Apollo chassis, but they would be pretty substantial changes compared to some other variants. The fourth passed its gray box review early in September, with the Lot Zero work due early October. Some of the downstream teams began their tasks too. That might be like an end of the year ship, probably not an IAE ship. The North American teams began the month finalizing fixes for the RSI Apollo ships ahead of their release. Apostolation, yeah. Various optimizations were also made following player use in the PTU. Lot Zero for the RSI Perseus was also passed early on in the month, with the team moving on to the final touches and downstream teams beginning to close out the ship. With where they are, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a CitizenCon release. The team moving on to final touches and downstream teams beginning to close out the ship. I mean, that could also be a CitizenCon ship. It might be, depending on how much that work entails. It might be CitizenCon, but I think the safe bet is probably IAE. The white box phase officially kicked off for the Drake Kraken. Holy shit! The Drake Kraken is finally in production. No longer pre-production. It's in white box. Last month's pre-production phase led to numerous improvements and adjustments to navigation, flow, and interactions throughout the ship. Please show off updates to the Kraken during IAE. I want to see it. Yeah, I think this is going to be an IAE next year release, but just the fact that it's finally in production 7 years later. Because CitizenCon 2018 was when it was concept released. That's when I bought it. It's in buybacks now. I melted it so I could get the dang oh gosh, I'm having a stroke. Ironclads. Anyway, so I might pull it out of buybacks. We'll see. 2 unannounced vehicles progressed to. One moved through the gray box phase, while the second entered white box. Cult of the Endeavor. I still have a CCU for the Endeavor from, I don't remember what. I have a chain to get one, but we'll see. I don't think it's going to be something that I want, but who knows? Even the Hope class, it's just like I don't want to run an entire hospital. The Galaxy is enough hospital for me for sure. Community. The team kicked off the month with the grand finale of this year's Ship Showdown, where the RSI Polaris claimed the crown. To honor the champion, all backers will receive an in-game commemorative Polaris-themed holographic banner at this year's Intergalactic Aerospace Expo. The Anvil Asgard, Anvil Gladiator, and RSI Zeus Mark II ES rounded out the top 4. All 4 will receive new 2955 Best in Show paints and posters at the IAE. And I own all of those ships. So, hooray, you and me. The Endeavor was your first permanent ship, can't be melted. I mean, I'm going to keep the path open. It's just, the only thing about the Endeavor I can see myself using would be the Hope. And it's like, like capital class, that size, that much hospital, like, I don't know, it will really just come down to seeing how it all plays out. Maybe at that point, when I have an org that I'm playing with regularly because the kids are in fucking college, I don't know. Ship Showdown was not the only race to reach its conclusion. The race for Stanton also crowned its champion, with Hurston Dynamics amassing a staggering 337,131,104 SCU to secure victory, followed by Microtech, Crusader, and ArcCorp. Yeah, it's going to be big. I'm not convinced it's going to be as big as some people think it is, but it is going to be a bigger ship. But it's also going to be long and thin. It's not going to be thick. The Pirate Week sailed into port as crew and corsairs proudly flew their colors in the pirate flag design contest. That's a pretty cool flag. The team charted the course for the treasure hunt by crafting riddles and clues that sent players searching across Stanton and Pyro, while each This Week in Star Citizen during the event spotlighted a pirate organization. To support the release of Alpha 4.3.1 Virtue Descent, the team published a catch-all post, updated the Onyx Facilities FAQ, and released the dedicated Q&A for the newly flyable RSI Apollo. They also work closely with internal teams to track sentiment and community feedback, ensuring community notes landed in the right developer hands. The team also continued their evergreen tasks, which included publishing This Week in Star Citizen, bi-weekly roadmap roundups, and other updates such as monthly reports like this one. They also gathered pressing questions from the community, followed up with the developers, and assembled Comms Dive number 3. Ooh, I need to cover that. Oh well, maybe I don't know. We'll see if I get a chance to cover it. Which provided detailed answers on topics ranging from ship lights to upcoming UI improvement. The Bar Citizen World Tour made 2 exciting stops in Lisbon, Portugal, and Rome, Italy. We had an incredible time connecting with the community in Portugal and Italy, both of which hosted incredible events. Community team. Pardon me. Finally, CitizenCon Direct 2955 is almost here. The team is working closely with the community organizers on several CitizenCon Direct watch parties, with key members of CIG attending events across North America and Europe. Be sure to check the locations to join the celebration. I will be attending our watch party right here in Boise with North End Trooper and other members of our Boise Bar Citizen group. Really looking forward to hanging out with the folks. Getting to hang out with like-minded adults that doesn't, in a way that doesn't have anything to do with work for the first time in months. Alrighty, core gameplay. As part of ongoing medical gameplay improvements. So this is the important part. Ongoing medical gameplay improvements. Medical gameplay is in development. We are just only seeing the very tip of the iceberg, which makes me encouraged but also apprehensive. The team provided support for bespoke take and place animations and reworked the implementation of players clearing their respawn point in vehicles. Bug fixes were implemented for the medical screen, along with improved validation to make it easier to spot errors. Northern Trooper says, most of our bar citizens are just shooting the crap as adults, parents, hobbies, life. I love it. Yeah, same, man. Yep, we have far more in common than just Star Citizen, that's for sure. Tiered medical bed respawn ranges were re-implemented for more robust compatibility with server mesh. Additionally, new controls were exposed to the designers to allow them to control healing cost per medical bed tier, while additional data was exposed to the UI designers to add new information to the medical screens. I also hope that the whole range thing goes away. I think you should be able to just respawn or regenerate at a tier 1 bed, and there is no range because regeneration works your imprint works based off of quantum entanglement. So if you die in Pyro, it shouldn't matter, where the bed is. It just matters where your imprint is stored, and gamify the expedited transfer of your imprint to a convenient, tier 1 bed, if need be. I don't think we need to be punished because you forgot to, set your regen point when you moved from one system to another. I don't think that is value added. I think by having it so that way you only regen in a tier 1 bed and those aren't all over the place, I think that is enough of a time sink to make it so that way people avoid death and make good decisions rather than just having respawn points all over the fucking place for regen. Yeah. You death cannot be meaningful if regeneration is such a focus, and if we're regenerating, if that's an easy and available option, even though it costs resources, it doesn't lend to the idea that we are not supposed to die very often in this game, which has always been the point. But it also doesn't lend to the idea where death has meaning and your life has value and you should be avoiding it. Because if regeneration occurs so frequently that it's the primary option, and we need to have the option to be able to regenerate 50,000 meters away, then that means that they're going to give us a whole lot more lives than previously thought. Well, and if you have more lives, then now life or death doesn't have as much meaning. It's not as meaningful. The only way it's meaningful is if you have few lives, if they are a something that needs to be rationed, and no one's going to ration it very well if you have the equivalent of dozens of lives. People will ration them and care for them if they're like single digits. If you have the proverbial cat has 9 lives, that makes death meaningful. But the only way you can have that work is if you don't die often. If you only die from catastrophic death where your body can't be recovered and you can't be medically revived. Just like how it happens in real life nowadays. People die all the time and are brought back to life. It happens. I've done it. Seen it. And 900 years in the future, it'd be happening an awful lot more. In far more extreme circumstances. Yeah, well, in Brennan G, that's that's part of it, and that's what was reiterated in Jump Point. Like, I will have to find which Jump Point it was, but I got caught up reading all of the last year's Jump Points, all of this year and last year's Jump Points while I was gone and traveling, because I was flying a lot for the last 2 months. And I forget what issue it was, but they, as part of the regen crisis, they talked about regen again, and they went over everything that was in the the highlights of the regeneration explanation, and none of it changed. None of what they talked about was different from when it was first introduced 4 years ago. Literally this time 4 years ago. As well as the fact that they reiterated multiple things and reemphasized multiple things, not only for over a year, nearly 2 years in Star Citizen community questions posts by the narrative team during 2022 and 2023 about regeneration. So there hasn't been time where this thing could have gotten turned on its head and so miraculously changed. And when they talk about, well, Richard Porwood was working, is the guy who's working on medical gameplay, and he was working on Squadron. He got moved to Squadron right around the same time that regeneration was introduced, and regeneration had been a concept that was in design for a long time prior to when it was first introduced. They were talking about the aspects of it a whole year prior to. Not only them, Chris Roberts and Richard Tyrer. So Richard Porter was either somehow completely in the dark about how all of this would work, and then got moved on to Squadron, and then no one fucking told him. Or, what we've been getting is just iterations on how all this works leading up to medical gameplay and regeneration being what they want. Is there a resurrection for death due to brain rot? Lizard. Yeah, people aren't looking ahead. I agree with you, Brennan G, because people aren't looking ahead. People aren't reading everything or hearing everything. They see one little tidbit covered by one content creator who gets, who blows it out of proportion, but then they forget to look at everything else in the greater context. And it's like, if you look at everything and then you look at this one thing, you're like, okay, this is an outlier. If you look at all the other evidence, this one thing that is making people doom and gloom is an outlier. And it there's no way that CIG is going to kill medical gameplay and healing gameplay when they have sold so many ships based on that function. And they have talked that function up since 2015. Like, oh my god. If they were to lean into the whole regeneration was always the plan thing, if that was actually Richard Porter's actual idea, and he's like, nah, fuck medical gameplay, we can't make that work. Yeah, I know other games have done it, but we can't do it. If they leaned into that, the amount of backlash would be greater than anything else that CIG has fucked up. It would be, to have CIG go so far into so many gameplay elements where people are like, we don't need this. This is extraneous. Physicalized cargo, engineering. The depth that mining and gameplay has, and where salvage is going to go. If CIG goes to the level of depth and intricacies for all those things and those professions, but then kills medical gameplay in favor of just, we're just going to have you regen and respawn just like other games, simple games do. That makes no sense. It is completely incongruous with how CIG does things and how Star Citizen has been developed. And the fact that people think that medical gameplay and healing is some sort of outlier. Like, we physicalized cargo. We physicalized moving fucking boxes for cargo hauling. But medical gameplay is out of the question? What? No, makes no sense. Sorry. All right, back to the monthly report. So for engineering, the team continued iterating on playtest feedback and hardening the feature ahead of wider scale testing. The only reason this isn't in tech preview right now is because we're going through the tech previews right now for the latest branch of development. The version of the game code of the game itself, the version of the engine and everything that the game runs on, that has been in development for over a year now. We haven't had an update to the game's engine in over a year. We've been running off the same dev branch for over a year. And now they are finally, that's why Vulkan has been in tech preview, because Vulkan is just one aspect of the changes to the engine that are being tested in tech preview, along with changes to the mission system and how all that works, which is why Elliot is excited about it. But it's a big undertaking because they've been cooking this version of the engine for over a year now. But until that version of the engine gets validated in tech preview and then goes to live and gets validated in live, they won't tech preview things like engineering, which run off of this new version of the engine. If you remember that image from the letter from the chairman, where they showed tech preview running behind or alongside the patch, how the patch would be tested. The things in tech preview run on are tested on the patch, the version of the game that is in live. So they won't tech preview engineering until the version of the engine that it runs on is in live. Just to allow for the tests to not be muddied by issues with the engine, and bugs with the engine interfering with the tests. But engineering is built on this latest version of the engine. Radar and scanning, crafting, all of these things, all the big features that everybody's been wanting, the feature development that everybody's like, that people say hasn't been happening. It's been happening, to a lesser extent because they've been polishing features in Squadron. But all those features in Squadron that they've been polishing are also working on that same branch of the engine. So that's why this next year, we're going to see the tech previews and we're going to see features being added again, because the blocker right now is that this version of the engine that's in the background and waiting to go through tech preview and then migrate to live. And that's what they said with Jared and Benoit were talking about the other week, where their goal is to not only have do more tech preview tests, but their goal is to have this version of the engine out and in live before the end of the year. Will they make it? We don't know. Hopefully. But that's their goal, is to have it out before the end of the year. So, the last patch of the year could be the first content patch of this year that is on the new version of the game. The vehicle command module feature continued through its pre-production phase, with the devs completing the prototype and technical design. I'm curious to find out what other ships and ship features can be enabled by the command module tech, because they never use things for just one iteration. And it's when I say just one iteration, it's the same thing. The way the Caterpillar works is the same way that the Ironclads work, but if they are developing the tech to make that work, they'll reuse it for other ships and for other features. Additional debug tooling revealed various issues with the underlying docking system, prompting an effort to fix critical flow issues. And again, this is ship-to-ship docking. And so I feel like this tech is what is going to allow for further development of the ship-to-ship docking feature, to allow ships to dock to each other, not just the Merlin to the Constellation, but ships with our little circle docking collars can dock to other ships with circle docking collars, and so on. Yeah, those Merlins have been, not working right for ages. Flight gameplay also progressed through September. AI can now correctly utilize control surfaces in atmosphere and adhere to their velocity goals. Not crashing into the planet anymore. Annunciators are no longer required to be attached to a dashboard to be functional, allowing for more flexibility in cockpit design. The team also prepared for focus testing on the improved flight model, which, is what they have just started doing, and poor Yogi having to deal with people who leak and can't respect an NDA. The ongoing inventory rework progressed with the implementation of equipment and equipped item slots. So this line was very important to me, because the equipment equipped item slots could just mean your equipment in terms of your armor, helmet, those sorts of things, as well as the magazines, med pens. But it can also signify updating the inventory to allow for the functionality of Starware, where we're able to attach pouches to clothing items, as well as attach different modules or subcomponents to your armors and suits to allow for functionality. And this is something that they mentioned in a month report earlier this year, I think it was April, where they talked about an equipable item that allows you to jam radars, whether FPS radars. So that way you could use that in order to jam people's radars, so that way they wouldn't know where you are, they wouldn't be able to scan for you, either do stealth or other aspects of sneak or attack. Further functionality was added to the paper doll UI and search bar. The team also exposed controls to help design the rules for proximity looting. This is going to be really handy to be able to do proximity looting and not have to interact with every little box that you come across, especially if there's multiples of them, and to simplify the process of moving items from one box to another, like if you're organizing your loot boxes when you're on missions. Scuttlebutt is that the leak was a third party who was able to glean feedback from the website rather than a tester. Oh, it could be. I don't know. I just know that Yogi was was not thrilled about it, and it's making his job harder. And we don't need that. If we want to get the new flight model, into the game, which is also what's holding back the new QT. We need to be able to have good focused testing in order to validate the flight model for all different use cases. Economy. The economy team began the month exploring how to make the players impact on freelancing commodity trading more impactful and longer lasting. No. The NPCs. Star Sim. No, this is dumb. We shouldn't have, player oligarchs, simply, running away with the economy, on a galactic scale. Just stupid. In the process, they adjusted offer and demand at some locations while turning profits to fit the current level of the economy. The team then evaluated the data on the drop rates of some rare items and made them more prevalent. The cargo manifests found in spawn ships were also redesigned so their value doesn't undermine the intended gameplay for certain missions. They do need to make it so that way more ships have cargo. When you soft death them as part of missions, you are incentivized to loot that cargo. But they also need to make it so that way the loot table also applies to soft death ships. So that way there's gear in lockers. There is equipment to be found lying on the floor. The weapon, item ports and stuff. Make it so that way when you go EVA in a soft death ship, it looks like it's lived in. Mission design. Mission design began September, finalizing the last narrative mission for the ASD facilities. Pardon me. Before looking forward to the rest of the year's content. They also began removing old factions players will no longer work with and reorganizing the ones they will. So they're talking about how the reputation system is changing and mission system is changing, so that way there will be factions that you don't do missions for, but that you do missions against. So that way you can't gain reputation with this group. You're either only fighting them or working against them. For a long time, a lot of people did bounty missions only for the drugs the ships could do. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because they need to balance that so that way people just aren't getting, every bad guy bounty, NPC bounty shouldn't have a ship full of high value drugs. You should be able to. You should have to hunt for like the rare smuggler or something, but that shouldn't be every single one. Let's see. Alongside this, the team reviewed bounty missions and added comms notifications for the mission provider. This is part of the ongoing initiative to bring older missions up to standard. Yay! More missions, more content. Mission design also worked alongside engineering to solve long-standing issues with spawn closets and made more fixes to the mission generation system. Good, because this has been such a frustrating thing with the old bunkers, and even in distribution centers where and other locations where NPCs are still getting stuck in spawn closets and not being able to progress the mission, not being able to have them spawned. So hopefully they will have this issue finally put to bed. Hey, Victoria, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah. People always get pissed when you take away their easy money. Narrative. In September, the narrative team focused on tasks to help close out the rest of the year strongly. They focused on crafting scripts that will add additional on crafting scripts, not crafting gameplay, crafting scripts that will add additional dynamic conversations, a new Kovalex mission representative, oh boy, vendors and customers to the game, and spent time generating mission text and lore discoverables for several upcoming events. Narrative then worked alongside with the environmental art and branding teams on the signage and environmental storytelling for several incoming levels. Oh shit! Paul just raided with 173 people. Hey everybody, good to see you. Hope the pub is doing well. QPan, thanks for stopping by. Hope you guys had a good stream.
Part of the ship.
Librarian noises.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the
Oh
crew,
boy.
part of the ship.
See, this is for
Part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
that work? There we go. Hey, my shout out worked. Nerds have arrived. Thanks so much for the raid, Paul. Really appreciate it. Hope you had a good stream. Good to see you, buddy. Looking forward to the 24-hour captain's table that's in three and a half weeks, I think it is. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. We are going over the monthly report that released last week. We're almost finished. Crayons, Inner Times. Previously got caught up on the Roadmap Roundups. I've been gone for almost a month, mostly with the Army, but also at a conference. But then I'm also going to be going over some predictions for CitizenCon, looking at a few items that I'm confident that we will see during CitizenCon Direct in 3 days. And of course, I'm doing this on Wednesday because I was like, oh, I don't want to stream, while Paul is streaming, but Paul moved up office hours to Wednesday because you're doing something else
Part
tomorrow.
of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
Thanks so much for all the follows. Really appreciate it. Hope you guys are having a good night. Let's wrap this up and then we'll get into the predictions and we'll see what you guys think. Time was also spent planning narrative initiatives for the next year. This was an excellent opportunity to learn from the recent releases and continue to strengthen the player's narrative experiences across the game. Online technology. Last month, the Live Tools team updated the error reporting pipeline, including moving Panic migration from Heap to Laravel. Panic! The Panic web app tool can now configure stream settings, removing dev time by allowing users to define the configuration of each stream themselves. The symbolizer was also rewritten to be event-driven, making it more stable and scalable. Progress was also made on a new web app to configure Bootstrap settings, which will provide a more accessible display for its users. For Hex, implementation began of the audit log UI that will extend the system's filtering and sorting capabilities. Concepting for Hex 4.0 continued too. The online services team continued to work on item recovery and the blueprint service, alongside continued bug fixing and support. So the blueprint service, they've talked about that in recent months. The blueprint service that they're working on as part of crafting. So there has been work on crafting. They're working on the blueprint service to connect into it. But they have also been, it was a few months ago that they mentioned that they were figuring out what part of crafting they want to introduce into the first public testing. So they're doing the same thing that they did for engineering, where life support is not going to be in the first release of engineering, but fire and fire extinguishers will be, and that's what we're going to be seeing in the tech preview for it. They're doing that for crafting. So there will be elements of crafting that will come later and get tested and released later than the first public tests and first public release. R&D. In September, the R&D team's focus remained exclusively on analyzing performance and optimizing engine and game code. So this is all the work that is going into the current branch of development, not the one that we're on right now in live, but the one that they are bringing into tech preview, as well as working on in Squadron 42 to get Squadron further polished leading up to its release next year, or intended release next year, but also to get the next branch of development for Star Citizen into tech preview, so that way they can get it out to live and they can start tech previewing the features that have been developed on it. Remember, we haven't had a new branch of the game's engine in over a year. We've been running on this branch since 3.24.2, I think it was the one where they said, okay, this is the branch of development that we are going to, where 4.0 is going to be working off of this, and it's compatible with server meshing. We've been on that branch ever since. So that's why the game is as stable as it is. Features are still, there's still content and features that are broken, but the game itself is very stable. But the net that also changes, almost exactly a year ago, give or take. We're pretty close. But that, when people are like, oh great, we're gonna get a new branch of development, new version of the engine, and it's gonna be full of bugs. Well, no, it's gonna go through tech preview, which is not something that has happened before. We prior to for this, when we the next pull of the engine, that occurred essentially with every patch, with every quarterly patch, we got a new version of the engine, and so it was just tested during Evocati and PTU. Well, this branch of development has been in development for over a year, so it's been in development longer than previous branches were. Yeah, 3.24.3, something like that. You know what I'm talking about, Zara. So this branch of the engine, this version of the engine, has had a lot more dev time and a lot more polish, especially because it's pulled from Squadron, which again, it's been getting worked on for a long time, than what we were used to in previous years. And so, in theory, it should be more stable, more polished, and in a better state when it even makes it to live. Especially given the fact that not only has it been getting internally developed for a long time, but then we're going to be running it through tech preview before it even goes into Evocati and PTU, as part of a live patch release. VFX. For Alpha 4.3.2, VFX finished up their tasks for the ASD locations and final event work, while the RSI Apollo, Triage, and Medevac received their VFX passes. Production continued on the Yormandi and its related locations too. VFX passes also began for vehicles coming later in the year alongside pre-production for upcoming locations and missions starting in the next year or so. And that is it for the September monthly report for Star Citizen. Let's go ahead and change screens. I'll close these windows and then we'll get into the predictions. Okay. Alrighty, I'm gonna turn off the music for this next part because we are going to be listening to some clips on YouTube, and I don't want the music to distract from what's being said. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and switch back. Okay, so I have, as you can see by the tabs, I have a number of predictions of things that I think are going to feature prominently during CitizenCon Direct this Saturday. And I picked these things because not only are they receiving, some of them, receiving a lot of publicly known work in that we are reading about it in the monthly reports, and we've heard a lot of talk about it. But also, these things, a number of these things are tangentially related to each other. And I think that makes for good ways for CIG to release features, but also to show them off in how they work. And so the first prediction is I think that we are going to see throughout CitizenCon Direct, I think we're going to see not only a segment specifically dedicated to radar and scanning, but I think we're going to see it also demonstrated within other segments and how the radar and scanning tech and feature integrates with other aspects of the game. And remember, this is radar and scanning is a one-ring system. It is a holistic piece of feature and piece of tech in that the way that you ping, the way that your radar works, the way that signatures are detected, as well as blocked and such, works the same way for ships as it does for when you're doing FPS. And it also is what allows your radar and scanning in a vehicle.
Part of the crew.
Hey, Vega, thanks for the follow.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew,
Part of the crew, part of the ship.
Part of the crew, part of the ship.
And so it's what will allow your FPS radar to detect vehicles, and for you to be able to scan them while you're on foot, as to an extent, but also allow for your ships to be able to detect people on the ground and other things on the ground. Not so much focus on ships. And so they first kind of talked about this during CitizenCon 2953. And I remember this panel because this is when they talked about the Drake Cutter Scout, because they wanted to talk about how the vehicle radar and scanning system was going to work. So let's go ahead and listen to this real quick.
What we also want to do is talk a little bit more about the future of scanning, if people are interested in hearing about that. So what is the future of scanning? We'll touch on it lightly. At the moment, there are two main ways for you to interact with the scanning gameplay loops. The first one's obviously the scan, and the second one's the ping system. Both of these are going to be merged into a single system known as a scan wave. When you send the scan wave out, if you get any successful pings, what will happen is it will immediately populate your HUD with an AR marker, giving you information about what you've been able to scan, as well as starting to give you far more interesting information than you get now, rather than just the name of the ship. The underlying system will work on the signature system, similar to what it does today, and there are two main scans. There is the quick scan. The quick scan is just a low version of it. It has a very small impact on your own signal output, so if you want to stay a little bit more covert and potentially not be seen looking at something you shouldn't, you can use that one instead. The main benefits are small increase in your actual passive detection range, as well as being able to detect things that maybe are a little fainter than you should be able to see. This has a decent amount of cutting through interference, but not phenomenal. The other version is the charge scan. The charge scan is the big scan. Now, this will actually allow you to detect things up to quantum boost range, which is way, way further than the current passive detection range. And not only that,
that's the big ticket, is being able to, if you remember, quantum boost, it's like, for distances around like 50,000 kilometers, if I remember correctly. And so being able to do your charge scan to be able to detect things out to that range. If you remember, they talked about this when they talked about the new quantum travel experience, and being able to use the quantum boost in order to boost to points of interest that you've detected via the system. So you will quantum boost, or you will use this system, it will reveal points of interest, and then you'll be able to quantum boost to them to investigate further.
it'll actually drop a marker allowing you to jump straight to that location for whatever it is that you found. Now, you don't want to be jumping in blind. And as I said, it's going to give you way more information than it did before. Some examples, but not limited to this, are things like whatever it is it charging a quantum drive? Is it firing? Is the shields generating? Does it have any shields? Is it perhaps charging an EMP? Maybe it's got a snare up trying to catch you. It gives you that additional information so you can make the decision whether you actually want to get to that location. That's just a brief glimpse into the future of scanning and what our vision is for it. Right now.
Okay, so that was just a couple of the basics surrounding how this is going to work. And we have seen very next to nothing about how this will work in terms of how it functions for ships. They have been very, very hush-hush about it. But we have seen a brief demonstration of kind of what this will look like for FPS. So let's go ahead and watch that little clip. This is again from CitizenCon 2953. We're 2 years on. This feature has been in development and has had a lot of work. Remember, they had been working on this for a while prior to these presentations, and now it's been receiving a whole lot of work, as demonstrated in the monthly reports. If you remember from Con 42, where Jared and Torsten were there giving a big talk, and they said that they weren't sure, if it was going to be radar and scanning, the holistic system between the two, FPS and vehicle, or engineering that was going to be the first tech preview feature. And Torsten was confident that it was going to be engineering, but based off of the monthly reports and what we've been reading for radar and scanning, it's going to be close. But this is one of those things where as important as I think engineering is, I think radar and scanning is going to be even more impactful for more people. Simply because if you don't do a whole lot of ship gameplay, you're still going to use radar and scanning when you FPS. There's going to be plenty of FPS players who rarely fly ships, who are going to be passenger princesses for other people to get to FPS content. I know a lot of people are like, no, Star Citizen, it's all about the ships. And it's like, I hate to break it to you, but ships are only one aspect of the gameplay. And that's why we have so many locations for FPS content, because it's an FPS game with spaceships in it. Yeah, exactly. The ships are just tools to do other things. And there are far, far, far more gamers who are way more interested in FPS content than there are gamers who are interested in flying spaceships. And that's where the money is for CIG. I hate to break it to you, it isn't in selling ships. It's in making content that FPS gamers want to play, and all they need is to be able to do the basics of flying the ship to get to where they want to go, or have a buddy or multiple buddies who are good at flying ships in order to get the group where they want to go. So let's watch this bit. This is from the Navigating the Universe panel from CitizenCon 2953.
Okay, now we fixed the damage, we need to find the enemies that caused it. While we're on the way, you'll notice that the on-foot emissions at the top of the screen. We're emitting infrared, electromagnetic radiation, and also sound.
This is that signature system that they were talking about. And so they've been working to unify this between FPS and ground, so that way both radar and scanning for vehicles and FPS use this same system. And so you setting off these emissions is what will allow ships to be able to detect you. And obviously that's how vehicles will be able to detect vehicles. Will FPS monetization eventually surpass everything they've made from ship sales? I think so. And not FPS monetization, but I think microtransactions. Because I think the future of Star Citizen's funding is based off of customization and ownership. And when players have ownership of not only their ships and can customize the interior, because we think of paints now, but think of all the things that you can put in your ship to decorate it and make it homey. Well, then apply that to your hab. Apply that to your apartment in building interiors. Apply that to your hangar, because they've talked about how they are working on customization and modules for your personal hangar. We can already place stuff, but where there's going to be modules that you can add for functionality and to expand the size and utility of, to be able to do for base building, do for your hangars, what you would do for your base. Obviously, you'll be able to customize your base. Your characters. All of these things provide opportunities for microtransactions for customization. That's where the money is in every live service game and every MMO right now. And ships, right now in terms of ship sales, we make about 100 million a year, a little bit more than 100 million this year in ship sales. I think we will easily eclipse that in microtransactions for customization when the player base is much larger than it is now and is filled with people who are more have a greater emphasis on FPS content than they do ship-based content. When I say FPS, I don't mean necessarily shooter or combat content. I just mean being on foot. SC is at 1 Madagascar military for fun. I'd pay $100 for a space pug to follow me around. So there's many ways. Yeah, exactly. Well, and like I don't remember, was it 1 or 2 patches ago where they talked about a sort of reigniting of the flat cat craze in the sort of patch banner window picture thing when you're loading into the game. I think we're gonna get. I wouldn't be surprised if within the next fiscal year for CIG, 1 year from now, we get pets. We get the basic creature behaviors, and we are able to get a flat cat and maybe something else.
If any of these go higher than the background levels, it will be easier for the enemies to detect us. Let's take a look at the bad guys, Bone. As part of the emissions and radar tech, we also have the ability to scan while we're on foot. If we tap the button, we can do a quick scan to reveal info about anything that's in our view currently. Okay, Bone, let's do a quick scan.
The quick scan just highlights them on your screen with UI, but also if you had your mini map up, they would show up on your mini map, and it just highlights that they are a threat, or maybe it might not highlight the threat. But that was the quick scan, just like they talked about the quick scan for your ship.
This highlights whatever's in our line of sight. There's also some risk and reward to the scanning system. By holding the button, we can charge our scanner, and this reveals enemies through walls using a more powerful wave. But it does cause a spike in our emissions, which makes us easier to detect. Okay, let's do a charge scan, please, Bone. Okay. We can also see the augmented reality box outs, which give us a summary of what we've detected.
So that was your charge scan. It can go through certain materials, like certain walls. People were worried about wall hacks, and it's like, well, it's not a wall hack if people can detect you. Like, it isn't a radar that's constantly working. It's you have to do this charge scan in order to detect through certain walls, not all walls, but certain walls. And so it's a thing. That also can be neutralized, and so there are counters to it. But essentially, if you can imagine the same thing, but for ships, being able to, but it will see farther distances. It will give you more information, just like how this works. But it gives you the idea.
Okay, let's have a look at our weapons. Let's get the gun out, please, Bone. Okay, we wanted to help the...
Okay, so there's that. So I wanted to bring up these deliverables related to radar and scanning. So the first is the star map rework, and everybody's like, well, wait a minute, we already have the star map in game, the new star map. And it's like, yeah, this new star map is handy, but it's still missing a lot of features and stuff. Well, if you remember, look at the description. An overhaul of the underlying system and associated UI for the star map, radar, and local area map and mini map. So when they did the entire overhaul for the star map and the mini map and your radar and everything, they made it so that way it would be it would function with the new radar and scanning system. The new radar and scanning system isn't in yet, and so when you are when you're running around and everything, you don't have a radar on your FPS minimap. You don't have the ability to scan. But when we get it in game, those things will work, and those things will pop up on your minimap and on your radar and on the star map, both for your character and your ships. Yeah, well, and that's so Zara, those signature systems and everything, this stuff, it will interfere. They've talked about this in monthly reports, and I could go back through this year's monthly reports and to show you the mentions, but the background interference in different things, or the background things, will interrupt or impede your ability to do scanning and radar, or impede how much information you get. So yeah, that is a thing. And then it's also like, the people talk about wall hacks, and you won't be able to scan or do a charge scan through all walls. It's that's part of the Maelstrom system, and so depending on what the wall is built out of will determine whether you can scan through it, or radar, use your scan through it. But so the star map rework laid the groundwork for all of this to happen. And so they're not having to rework the star map, the mini map, all that, in order to make radar and scanning work. This is a feature that was developed with that system already built in, but they hadn't finished the radar and scanning bit for it when they released the new star map. So here's vehicle radar and scanning, the sprint for that. The sprint for vehicle radar and scanning hasn't been updated in a while. But you can see that this sprint was right here, and this is the sprint for the core gameplay team. But there were mentions of vehicle radar and scanning in the monthly reports in 2025. So I want to say it was April, May, June, if I remember correctly, around there. So this work isn't done, but it was farther along than because it was the system that we have now isn't getting fully replaced. It's getting updated to work to utilize the new unified system, and so it's separated now between your ping and your scan, and now it's getting unified to be a bit more user friendly. But they are still working on the radar and the vehicle radar and scanning part. They did mention that in a couple month reports this year. FPS radar and scanning. So here is the current sprint. This is why I brought this up when we were going over the roadmap updates, because they have been continuing to update this sprint. You can see it goes all the way back. The current sprint goes all the way back to Q2 of 2024, so over a year. But then there's previous work, a lot of previous work, going all the way up into 2022 with all the other teams before they unified it into core gameplay. So FPS radar and scanning has seen a lot of work, and it's continuing to. If you read about it in the monthly reports, you'll see the descriptions talk about polishing and making usability updates and such. So it is very far along, and really the thing that's holding it back is the fact that we don't have the branch of the engine that this all runs on in live yet. It's only in tech preview. And so as soon as that branch of the engine goes through tech preview and out to live with a patch and gets validated, then we will see tech previews of these features like this. But the fact that they are describing it the way they are in the monthly reports and have been for a while, I think it's a sure bet that we are going to see both vehicle and FPS radar and scanning in both a feature dive as well as in gameplay demonstrations within CitizenCon Direct. So that's radar and scanning. I won't bore you guys with all the monthly reports and stuff, but there's it's been radar and scanning for FPS has been in almost every monthly report this year. And then even vehicle radar and scanning was mentioned a couple of times as well. So the next thing I wanted to bring up, and the reason I put this in the as number 2, is the inventory rework. And I brought this up, and it's tangentially related to radar and scanning, because there was a mention. We read about this in the monthly report, how they talked about the ongoing work on the inventory rework. They're talking about equipment and items, and how you equip those with the new inventory system that they're building. Well, one of the items that they developed, pardon me. One of the items that they developed for the FPS radar and scanning feature, and that was the February monthly report. It was within the first 2 or 3 monthly reports for the year. Was a device that allows you to equip it and then jam other radars, so that way you couldn't be detected. Well, in order to use something like that, you'd have to be able to equip it. Do we have, we don't have equipment slots right now on our ragdoll in the current inventory system. You've got grenade slots, you've got medical pen slots, you've got magazine slots, but we don't have functional usable items, which is something that they've talked about for years as part of something that they want for Star Citizen, is to be able to have subcomponents that you equip onto your armor and suits that provide a functionality. And so one of those functionalities is a radar jammer, apparently. And I'm sure that there will be things that allow you to do different types of scanning, or to improve your scanning ability. But they already mentioned that this year. And so given that they mentioned it earlier in the year, and that people are worried about wall hacks, people want to be able to do stealth gameplay, I think it's a foregone conclusion that when radar and scanning gets released, that we will have items related to that feature to be able to equip onto our characters. Well, in order to equip them onto our characters, we have to have the functionality within the inventory system to be able to do so. And so that was something, the way they worded it in their descriptions of the work on the inventory rework, I think hinted towards that. This is my new radar jammer. If I pull this up and it's inappropriate, Zara, I'm gonna laugh. The Drake Herald Mark III. That is a big gun. Huckleberry jam running Huckleberry. Oops. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. And so this is the current sprint on the inventory rework. But the work for the inventory rework actually goes back to January, February is when it was first mentioned in the monthly reports. I went back a whole year from now. I didn't go prior to that. But the inventory rework, they were concepting the new inventory back in February. We didn't actually see it until they showed it off in July. And so we're going to look at that Star Citizen Live where they talked about that. But this is where they first showed it off. And then this is the most recent image we saw in the monthly report. I think it was last month. And people are like, "Oh my God, that looks so cluttered and busy." Well, you're not going to see all this stuff all at once. You won't see all these things all at once. This is just showing everything that's possible. And I think the other hint is, so you have your personal inventory, and so you can see all the things that you are carrying in your personal inventory, but then you can see all the things that are equipped. And so you can see weapons right here. You got your primary, your secondary, and then your sidearm, and there are different attachments. But then you have a utility slot. And so if we clicked on this right here, it's hard for you guys to see, but under equipment, if we clicked on this, and maybe it gives you 3 rows, maybe it gives you 4 rows, we don't know. But even if it gave you 3 rows, you'd have grenades, you'd have med pens, and something else. We don't know. Maybe it had mags, or maybe you'd be able to click this and you could scroll and have multiple slots. But this is the functionality we need in order to be able to equip equipment that allows us to do things like have a radar jammer. Welch's corn sugar with purple dye to approximate grape jelly. I prefer to wear medium armor for the aesthetic. I don't like the aesthetic for heavy armor, but right now, just due to all the events and stuff, the gameplay and having a heavy armor backpack has been OP. Yeah, and this is concept art, but they are well beyond this in terms of development, and so I think we're going to see this in game. But this is just a concept imagery of the new UI. Now, I'm not going to go back through all the monthly reports that it's been talked about, but the way that they are talking about it is the functionality is well into development. It's not just concept art.
This way of acquiring stuff. I got to ask you about the inventory system.
Yeah.
Help,
Okay.
Declan.
Well,
help.
There is
Like stuff doesn't stack right. Stuff. It's. I got to just help. What can you tell us?
We can
Come on,
help.
Dick, fix it.
Icy Worm, I agree with you, and I think being able to carry more weight will eventually be tied to
Part of the crew.
whether you're wearing powered armor.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
Thank you for the follow, because there have been descriptions or many item descriptions that talk about how certain armors are powered or augmented. Not power armor like an Atlas is a powered lifter thing, but in that there's augmentation to your strength. Think of it kind of like the Martian Marines, the power armor that they wear in The Expanse. How it's augmented, and some combat armors won't be augmented like that. Some will. Augmentation will come with perks, with bonuses in that. Okay, yeah, you can run faster, you can carry more weight. But they also requires power, and once you run out of power, that's one of the subcomponents that they've talked about is the fact that if you want this, you have to equip it with a battery and you have to recharge the batteries, and if you don't have a battery, then okay, well, you're fucked. Yeah, so we'll see how it ends up working out, but I agree, because I think it shouldn't, the backpack and the weight shouldn't necessarily be tied to the armor size, but whether it is powered armor or not. And generally, like, that's, powered armor is going to be the heavier armor, but I'm sure you could have power armored medium armor, in order to, maybe you want to carry more harvestables or things that you've hand mined, but it doesn't need to be heavy armor because you don't need the protection. But it still gives you the opportunity to carry more weight, or or more volume.
Well, I'm personally not fixing it. However, the talented folks in Montreal are working on a rework at the moment, so I will share some concept UI of what being worked on, and we can talk through it. Hang on, I don't use Zoom much, so here we go. So we're looking at some concept UI here. Obviously, you can see there's a visual facelift, but kind of the most interesting aspect to me isn't super obvious straight away, and that is that you will be able to access other inventories that are nearby to you within proximity. So if we start drawing, we imagine we've got our storage box over here, and then we kill the guy. Yeah, thank you. We kill the guy. Here he is. He's on the floor. So he would be accessible as one of the tabs up here, and then the inventory box would be over here. Same on the other side. And so when you press I to access the inventory, you can then access the dead bodies inventory, access your storage box. You can start moving stuff around without having to directly go up to the body, go to the box, press F. So it's much quicker to kind of get in there and start looting. We'll just get rid of all this. If we focus in on one of the panels, you can see it's called Personal All. That's just kind of the default person would be on the left, and it's all because it's showing everything that is stored upon your person at that moment. If you wanted to see what is in your backpack in particular, you have these side tabs, and then we have a search function which has been added in. If you were to click this, a search box would come out over here, and you can search the item that you want. You have your select all, your capacity, you have your filters. These filters are kind of similar to the freight elevator, where you have the drop-down box with the subcategories here, and we're working on these filters being multi-purpose. What I mean by that is, at the moment, filters, you click them once and it means I want to see these items. If you were to click them twice, it would hide that category of item. Now, there's a lot of people with freight elevators full of decorations they don't really care about at the time, so they can just hide all the decorations if they want to. Clear filters, sorting options. When crafting comes in, this will be big because you want to sort by quality, items here, that kind of stuff. And then tucked away in the corner is stack all. So that's a nice quality of life addition as well.
Just a nice little addition. Just a nice little addition.
Yeah, there he is.
Anything about maybe getting to name our boxes, label our boxes?
Yes, so this is your commodity box, and then this will be like a backpack, and one of the options will be to right-click and just rename them. So you could say like, oh, this is my box with high quality Jana lighting, whatever.
You've given Boring Gamer, Salty Mike, and Space Tomato so much content for the next week.
Bro, we're not done. We've got tooltips and everything.
Oh my god, here he goes.
So
we're not going to watch the whole thing. But obviously, this image was from that presentation. But this presentation was in July 3rd. We are now 3 months on from there, and they were just showing off the concept art. It was beyond concept art phase at this point. So it's, if you read through the last 4 or 5 month reports, it's been really interesting to follow along. This is going to be a huge quality of life change. I just love that, having these drop downs and having filters, like the current system, when you use the filters, the little filter things they will overlap and cover up each other, and so you can't see stuff, and see the description when you're trying to also, use the filters. Yeah, the VidBlitz, that's one of the big issues, is the current system is developer art. It is not UI artist art. And so it is not performant at all. It is very sluggish. And so that's one of the big reasons that they are doing this, is not only to make it more usable and user-friendly and intuitive for, new players, but also to make it so that way that it is not such a performance hog. But also just being able to more efficiently loot will be great, and be able to move things around, because there's so many times where there's multiple boxes and crates and bodies around you, and you're just trying to find the stuff you're looking for. So yeah, it'll be. I think this is definitely something that we're going to see at CitizenCon, and see their progress on it, and hopefully have it in our hands in the very near future. So that was the inventory rework. So the next prediction I have is Planet Tech V5. And so if you remember, we got the Brave New Worlds presentation at CitizenCon last year. And it was just really incredible. And I'm going to bring that up. Let him start talking. We're going to turn off the sound.
See,
play it in the background. But so with the Brave New Worlds presentation, we got to see the first phase of Genesis, which is the Planet Tech V5 stuff, and being able to make new biomes and a far greater density in terms of assets, asset scatter like rocks, trees, bushes, better terrain mapping. It's as well as making the art process or how planets are made vastly more efficient, so that way they can churn out planets a whole lot faster. And so this presentation, to me, the whole Genesis presentation was just mind-blowing. I just lost it watching this. And if you follow the dev tracker, we had a big update or a whole bunch of discussion from Allie Brown. So Allie Brown is the guy who's doing the presentation right now, or the one that's playing right here. And so he's one of the main engine guys for CIG. And so back at the beginning of July, so actually 3 months exactly from 3 months ago exactly, he replied to a post about the status for Genesis made back in May. And he says, the planet creation aspect of Genesis is progressing well. Planet creation aspect. So the stuff that he was talking about in this segment of the presentation. And so this is the planet creation segment right here, phase 1. Phase 2 is location. And so that's Starchitect. That's the biomes. And so we don't, he's not necessarily talking about the additional biomes and Starchitect and this other stuff that comes later. He just says specifically planet creation. But being able to create planets a whole lot faster, as well as have them have far greater density, be more performant, and just essentially look a whole lot better, as we saw in this part of the segment, is huge. So he says, the planet creation aspect of Genesis is progressing well and is a major focus for myself and many others. I can't share a timeline for its release yet, but it'll likely start with one planet before rolling out to others and more diverse biomes. So the planet creation aspect of it, this segment here, will come first before phase 2, the locations with the biomes, will come after, rather than a massive full replacement. This will allow us to roll it out sooner. We hope the rate of planet production after this point to increase significantly due to the massively streamlined art process. As for the specific tech features, most of the infrastructure is now done, but there are a few important visual features left, and then 2 major tech changes to achieve the desired performance, and then a bunch of smaller tasks. Pardon me. And a bunch of smaller tasks. If I had to put a percentage done on it, maybe 75%, but it's incredibly hard to be precise. And so he dodged another question, and then there's a few other replies. So talking about object scatter, for boulders and such, that will change. That was something they talked about in the presentation. They're not doing roads as part of Planet Tech V5, but that's something that will follow later. They don't have any plans to change planet sizes. And Planet Tech V5 isn't something that is blocking orbits. That's mostly a star map issue. V5 is also not linked to any changes in clouds. So just if there are moons and planets that don't have clouds that are supposed to have new clouds, that's up to the art and design folks. That isn't being blocked by Planet Tech. So that's the setting expectations aspect of what I expect for Planet Tech. I expect to get an update on the progress of Planet Tech V5. A summary of where they are with these different phases, but also I think that they are going to show off what they are able to do with the planet creation aspect at this point in time. And they had talked about the plan, and I forget where, in either this presentation or the Beyond Pyro one, but they did say that the plan for Genesis is that Castra would be the first system built entirely using Planetech V5. And so along those lines, we also had a comment in a Discord that I am told is legitimate, or a series of comments. And so Crazed Out Fool, CIG Planetech, a dev, and I don't know which dev this is, said in another Discord, I may be biased, but I think Nyx will be a cool place to see once it releases. And someone replied, surely it will be our Christmas present, right? Right? My lawyer is making hand gestures, so I think I'm not allowed to say. And they joked, Nyx, end of year confirmed, Wii U. How do I... And so someone said, I forgot, will Nyx still be Planetech V4 or will it be Planetech V5? And that Sinclair person said 4. Crazed Out Fool reiterated, Castra is the first system supposed to be the first using full V5. The tech isn't 100% finished, so we couldn't release a whole system with it yet. As Ali just said 3 months ago, they were at 75%. So, but it isn't 100% finished, so they couldn't release a whole system with it yet. But you will start with Castra once the tech is finished, right? That's for the artist to choose. It's supposed to be that according to the plan announced last year, but plans changed. So maybe, like if we end up way too late on the tech, they may want to release Castra in V4. Or if we're early, never happening. So I don't think that, being that, Ali Brown thinks that they are around 75%, that they are way late on the tech. And so I don't think that there is a reason that they would build Castra in V4, but it suggests that there is a timeline for Castra. And if there's a timeline for Castra, and they might build the Castra system in V4. Remember, there's only 2 planets. There's Cascom, which is where Sherman is, and then there's Castra 1, which is just basically a bombed out husk. Not a lot going on with it. But that means that there's a timeline for release that they're trying to hit. And so that means that they are working on Sherman. And you have to remember that the locations team, and before the locations team, they had the two landing zone content teams. The locations teams function much like the ship teams do, in that the devs who are doing the white box work, the gray box work, and then the final art and downstream work, they don't all work on stuff at the same time. So if you remember, in the Beyond Pyro presentations, we learned about, we got to see the progress on Levski, which would be the landing zone content teams, as well as the progress on Sherman. And those are the 2 landing zones in Nyx and Castra. So let's watch the one, let's look at some of the work on Levski. And we're not going to look at the exterior work because we got to see all that, but it's the interior work that's the important part in deciding, how far along is Levski. Hey, High Prince of Dragon, good to see you, buddy.
Down at the base of the asteroid, there will be banks of exterior 0G freight elevators. These will be priority access for Hull Series ships. So for all the Hull Series folks, we got you covered.
And these are in PTU.
The same functionality is also coming to space stations in both Stanton and Pyro. But wait, there's a little bit more. Let's take a look.
So personally, I hate this. I love the external freight elevators. I hate that in order to access it from your ship, you need to EVA over here. I think that's dumb. I think that this needs to be enclosed and there needs to be a docking collar. And you dock to it. And that way you don't have to, you can access it and then you go to the interior of the ship and go do your shopping and stuff while people are unloading your cargo or whatever. But you're going to park your ship just off screen here, and then you have to go suit up, and then you have to EVA 20 feet just to press the buttons on the inventory kiosk to either bring up cargo or put it away, I think is silly. I think, we should be able to park and dock, and regardless of whether it's a ship with a capital size dock or a big, large dock or one of the smaller circular ones, I think that it's silly that this is exposed to vacuum and not being, we don't dock with it. Yeah, and I think that being able to use your mobiGlass to do it too, like once you get the ability to do it once you park at a certain point alongside this. That's just fine as well. But then again, why did they create this art? Like I love having external freight elevators. It totally makes sense. It just doesn't make sense for us to have to EVA to come over here to do this, or to, or come out, because even if you want to access this from the inside of the station, you have to put on a vacuum rated armor or suit. Why is this not enclosed? I'm not worried about getting ganked at all, simply because that's one of those things that's going to be a thing of the past in the not too distant future. If you're going to a space station and unloading external cargo, you're going to be surrounded by guns protecting the station. There's going to be security services and stuff. The days of getting ganked while unloading cargo or getting ganked around a station are going to be gone for the vast majority of locations in the not too distant future. But in terms of a long-term design, I think this is silly. But let's watch the rest of the video because that's what we're talking about.
All right, cool. So.
All right. So, we talked about the different teams and how they, for landing zones and locations. Well, they just showed the interior Levski, and everybody's like, oh, wow, that looks great. That was gray box. And so there's still textures missing. There's still a lot of work to be done with lighting and VFX and audio and all that. So that was gray box during the presentation last year, which means it was actually further in development at that point. But this was from, that is a snippet in time from the presentation from before, CitizenCon last year. And so that means that Levski should have progressed through final art, the location equivalent of final art since then, along with other locations, in Nyx, and everything that goes with it. And there's been hints in the monthly reports via narrative and other teams that talk about missions and the NPCs walking around, the locations, the narrative stuff that goes into it. And so I think we are going to see a gameplay demo heavily involving Levski and the Nyx system. And I think that gameplay demo will have different phases of you being in Levski, you exploring Nyx, you using radar and scanning, getting to use the new inventory rework in order to do proximity looting, all these sort of systems combining, throughout the presentations, because I think it's a foregone conclusion that Levski, the landing zone for Nyx, is at final art, and is nearing ready to be released, and is just being held up by the development of the engine and the game itself. And we don't know. And I also think that we may start out at Levski and then go out into the asteroid belt and see some of the asteroid facilities as they've been coming along through their development, and so on. But we also got to see Sherman. Sherman, which is the landing zone for the only habitable planet, one of only 2 planets in the Castor system. And let's watch this part.
Breaking through the clouds, you'll find a landscape full of Great Lakes and lush crimson forests.
Hey, Socially Confused. Good to see you, buddy.
And as you saw in the CTG presentation, you can see how we're going to make these worlds with the new technology. High up on the mountain range, here at the highest peak, we can just make out the landing zone called Sherman.
This still gives me chills. I can't count how many times I've watched this.
Which is fondly known by its residents as the island in the sky. Sherman is currently in pre-production, but I wanted to take the opportunity.
So pre-production, similar to how ships work, like the Kraken just left pre-production and went into white box. And so as of the time of the making of this presentation, so they made this presentation prior to CitizenCon. So prior to CitizenCon, they were in pre-production for Sherman, which means that they are, most likely, into a gray box phase for Sherman. That would be my bet, is that they are into gray box phase, that Sherman is at the same level of development this year now that Levski was at last year, if that makes sense. And so I think we're going to see an update on the development of Sherman, just like we got to see an update on Levski, to include interior spaces, and more of the layout and how it all comes together. Because the landing zones and the development of landing zones and cities and stuff like that is separate from the development of the planets. The planets are built differently. The planets are built, and then locations are built on top of them. And so they can work, or the locations are added on top of them. And so the locations like Sherman can, or just like how New Babbage was built, those can be built without the planet itself being done. And so Sherman isn't being held up by Planet Tech V5. The landing zone content teams, the location content teams, are still working on Levski. They're still working on Sherman, while the Planet Tech teams are working on Planet Tech V5.
Opportunity to show at least a sneak peek. Let's take a look.
Oh, this music. So that's that part of that prediction. I think that we're going to get an update on the capabilities and where they are at with Planet Tech. I think we're going to see a lot of gameplay in Nyx, but I also think we're going to get an update on the development of Sherman, the landing zone. See where that is at. So my last prediction is regarding Starware. And so we talked about the inventory rework and how that's the UI interface that will allow us to do the things that Starware it intends for us to be able to be able to attach pouches and equipment to our gear, to be able to wear armor over clothing. And so we got the special, during the Dress to Kill presentation, we got to look at the different specializations, and see what that entailed. Is this the right timestamp?
I know you guys have wanted this for a long time, so yeah, great. And to tell you even more about this new system that we do call Starware, please welcome to the stage lead character technical artist Armando Lira. Oh shit, bro.
Thank you so much, Nick. Hello, everyone. I am so happy to be here presenting for the first time. How cool are specializations? We are sure you'll enjoy finding the best combinations for your playstyle. And for that, we had to create a system that gave you all the freedom that you deserve. It's something that I am sure you've all been waiting for so long. Starware. So if you're... Are you tired of choosing between clothing or armor? Yeah. So finally, you'll be able to mix and match. Starware is fashion that meets purpose. As specializations provide you with a multitude of stats to combine, you'll also be able to choose the visual style that you want. But beware, with added options also comes the responsibility of choosing the right combination for the right situation. Let's look at some of the possibilities that Starware will be able to provide you. Yeah.
All right, so Starware, this is where it was at last year. But if you remember from the character advancement presentation back at CitizenCon 2953, they talked about the Frontierware and how you would be able to attach and have customization options for pouches, storage, and that's what leads to the ability to attach equipment and other things. So if you remember,
Yeah.
this one right here. And I think this is important because they haven't been talking about this in the monthly reports at all. We've been seeing the work on the inventory, but we've gotten to a point in Star Citizen's development where not everything that they are working on is being talked about. And so obviously you can see this is the old inventory system and the old UI, but they're building the feature and the tech to be able to equip pouches like that. But with the new the inventory system and the new UI, along with the advancements of the tech with Starware, we'll be able to not only equip pouches, but you'll be equipped, equipment like how I mentioned the radar jammer when we were talking about the radar and scanning prediction. And so I think that's where we're at. We came from this in 2953, where we're able to see them attaching pouches to equipment, and it looks, it looks okay. It's kind of jank. To Starware last year, where we're seeing the ability to customize, and mix and match. And now we're getting the inventory rework that is going to allow us to be able to have a functioning system that allows us to equip all this stuff, as well as be able to start implementing the functionality of the things that you can equip with your mixing and matching. And so I think we're going to see a big update on Starware and the functionality that brings to the game, and the fact that Starware, this is one of those things that's being built on that's built on the new branch of the engine that we don't have yet. And so without that branch of the engine, that dev branch of the game being in our hands, these things can't make it into the game, but they're still getting developed. And so now that we're at that inflection point where this newest branch of development, this newest branch of the engine is going into tech preview, we're getting to test it. They're aiming to have it in live before the end of the year. Whether it happens, I don't know. But end of the year, beginning of next year, whatever, that's when they can start bringing in these other features and start adding them to the game. And so we've had a lull in feature release this year, but there has been continual feature development that is built on a branch of development that we don't have yet. And so when that branch comes to live, then we start getting these features added, and these are these things that are really impactful to your quality of life, where we can go, and how you play the game. It's a lot of really big changes under the hood, as well as player facing, that make a big difference, and are going to make. I think it's going to make next year very different from this year, but we'll have to wait and see. So that's all that I have in terms of predictions for CitizenCon. There's these are the things that were, there's plenty of things, other things that I'm pretty confident we're going to see, but these were my top items that I think that we're going to see at CitizenCon, and the things that I think that would be most impactful for CIG to show us the development on, in terms of being crowd pleasers, as well as being things that we need to have into the game beyond just more showing us engineering. We've seen plenty of engineering. We know it's coming, but we haven't seen a lot on radar and scanning. We haven't seen hardly anything of the inventory rework other than the concept art. There's a whole bunch of leaks about content for the Nix system in the current PTU builds. We haven't heard anything about Star Wars development since then, but that doesn't mean they're not working on it, and we know that it's built on this latest branch of development. So let's go ahead and close out the show, because I have to get to bed, got to wake up early tomorrow and do the whole dad thing. Alrighty. 07 Victor, good to see you. Thanks for joining me. A lot of new faces, or people and returning faces. Thanks again to Paul. I know you probably hit the hay for the raid and bringing all those people over to the show. I hope you enjoyed what I had to show you guys, and I really appreciate the engagement and chatting with you guys. Yeah, I guess we'll find out in 3 days. Who knows? And it's whether I'm right or not, I don't care. I'm just glad that like for me, I'm simply happy that we are at the point where we are getting tech previews, because they obviously thought those were coming sooner, and we are a few months late from where they thought they would be coming. But I think that the big blocker right now is the engine, and getting that branch of the engine out, and the fact that we're getting it into our hands and testing it, is a big step and an important one. And even though CitizenCon is only 2 hours, I'm super looking forward to hanging out with my Boise Bar Citizen friends who I don't get to see often enough, and hang out with often enough. Looking forward to having some I don't want to say adult time, but time with grown-ups that doesn't involve work. Yeah, the game is like, for me, it's always, everything's always 6 months late. We are, and it's like, whatever. And with how busy I am with my personal life and even my professional life, I'm like, I don't get wound up about it at all, because I don't get to play as much as I'd like to. I would love to play more, but it is what it is. But like, for me, for the gameplay, for the stuff that I like to do, for the game to feel like the game that they are building, the game that they want us to be able to play, I think having the radar and scanning system in is absolutely crucial. I think having engineering in is absolutely crucial. I think those are the two most important things for making the game feel like the game's supposed to. And the inventory rework is just a quality of life thing that just, the current inventory system drives me nuts. Especially when I go play other games, and the inventory and looting. I do like the looting system. It's quick for looting, but in terms of being able to organize your inventory, your player inventory, and like, I've looted a bunch of stuff, and then I go back to my ship, and I've got 4 1SCU containers in my baby's first dropship Pisces, and I'm trying to organize my stuff. It's a pain, and it shouldn't be. Yeah, we are one step closer to exploration gameplay. And being able to have your on-foot radar and scanning and exploring caves and exploring interior locations, and not having the whole map available to you. We need to have the fog. And that's what I'm looking forward to, is being able to actually explore a location and not know where everything is, because I can just pull up my local area map. But let's go ahead and find someone to raid, because it's important to pay it forward. And let's see who. Turn that off. There we go. And I will probably be streaming again, starting at the same time tomorrow night, around 8 o'clock, and I'm going to try and get caught up on the Onyx facility stuff. Let's see. I've been enjoying touching grass. Yeah, no, I hear you. I've been very, very busy and focused with real life, and getting to play Star Citizen when I can is great. But between the kids and now a dog and my wife, and the army, it's been busy. Ooh, let's see. I don't think 5-star is actually playing the game. It looks like we'll do the CitizenCon waiting room. I wish you could actually like hover over it and see who's actually playing versus like AFK streaming. Anyone have any suggestions for people to raid? Anyone watching anyone right now that's actually playing the game? I don't want to send you guys over to raid somebody that's, just has a YouTube playlist going. We'll do the real KG. Real KG is a good guy. I've rated him. He's rated me. Let's send it over. Yep, they're actually playing. Alrighty. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Raid now. Cheers, everybody. Good night. Thank you.